By the time the sheriff finished taping the eviction notice to the HOA clubhouse door, the board meeting had fully transformed into chaos and pastel tracksuits. Linda Fairview, the HOA president, shrieked at the top of her lungs as she slammed her binder-off bylaws on the folding table so hard the complimentary cookies bounced. "This ice illegal," she yelled. The sheriff didn't even flinch. "Ma'am, you and the board are hereby notified that all common areas, access roads, and amenities of Meadow Park Estates Homeowners Association sit on land owned by one." Had checked the paper. Mr. Nolan Pike. Every head turned toward the back of the room where I was leaning against the wall, quietly sipping the world's most awkward coffee from a foam cup. "You, Linda," hissed, pointing at me like she'd just identified the source of all her problems. "You're the squatter with the legal barn. You don't even belong to this community." "Funny you say that." I replied calmly, because technically the entire community belongs to me. The room exploded in shrieks, questions, and someone crying about their mortgage. Linda jabbed her finger toward the sheriff with fury in her eyes. "You can tevic an entire HOA," she shouted. "We have bylaws." The sheriff adjusted his hat with a tired expression. "Ma'am, bylaws don't trump the county land records." She rounded on me next, her eyes blazing with rage. "If you think you can stroll in here, wave some paperwork around, and take everything we've worked for," she started to threaten. I shrugged with a slight smile. "Lady, you started all this with a $50 fine over memo box. And that was how an HOA discovered its entire kingdom was built in land it didn't actually own. My name is Nolan Pike, 42 years old, civil engineer by training, land surveyor by trade. Personality somewhere between quiet neighbor and the guy who only comes out to get mail at 11 at night, that I'd spent 15 years working on other people's projects, roads, drainage plans, subdivision plats. I liked maps, topography, and being left alone. People, not so much. After a small tech stock gamble paid off, I did what any introverted man with a mild obsession for land records would do. I started buying property, timber tracts, hunting parcels, old family land no one wanted. Then one day at the county courthouse auction, lot number 47 hit the list. Approximately 1,500 contiguous acres. Tax foreclosure, former Meadow Ridge Holdings, LLC. The minimum bid was suspiciously low. The legal description was a mess. Half-finished plats, half-recorded easements. Exactly the kind of nightmare no one wants to touch. Exactly the kind of nightmare I knew how Tori had. I spent 40 minutes tracing parcel boundaries while the auctioneer worked through storage units and abandoned sheds. When Lot 47 finally came up, only one other guy raised his paddle, and I could tell he thought he was bidding on hunting land. He dropped out fast. 10 minutes later, I own 153 acres of scrubby hills, creek bottom, and according to some very old, very weird documents, a bunch of future residential holdings that had never been correctly parceled. I drove out that weekend, expecting trees and nothing else. What I found instead was a gated subdivision called Meadow Park Estates. A largest one entrance sign I definitely did not approve. Roughly 220 beige houses. An HOA clubhouse sitting on what the records called Parcel A. And my favorite part, the county GIS showed every one of those homes sitting on unreleased leaseholds and lapsed options from a defunct developer that never actually finished buying the underlying land. In other words, the HOA owned the decor. The residents owned the lumber and drywall. But the dirt they were all resting on, that belonged to me. Here's the thing. It wasn't trying to be a villain. My original plan was simple. Build a small cabin on the far side of the property away from the subdivision. Put up some fencing. Maybe run a few cows. Let the HOA people live their beige. Committee approved, lives in peace. Problem was the HOA people didn't return the favor. The first time I met Linda Fairview, she was marching down my gravel drive in a visor and pastel tracksuit, flanked by two board members with clipboards like they were her emotional support assistants. "Sir," she called before she'd even reached my gate, "this road is not up to Meadow Park Estate standards." I looked at the road she was pointing at. The logging trail I graveled myself, clearly outside their decorative stone entrance and clearly marked with a county road number. "That's because it's not yours," I said. "You're trespassing. She gave me a tight smile. Everything past the gate is subject to HOA guidelines, mister. She paused. Expectantly. Pike, I said. She snapped open a printed packet, like it was a holy text. Your RV, tractor, and metal barn are all violations. Outbuildings must be pre-approved and visually consistent with the community. I stared at her. I don't live in your community. If you use our roads and come through our gates, you are part of the community, she replied, sounding like she practiced that line in front of a bathroom mirror. That gate is on my land, I said slowly. You understand that, right? She laughed, sharp, brittle, the kind of laugh people use when they don't understand and don't care. Sir, we've been here for years. We have an HOA. We have covenants. You can't just show up with rusty equipment and think you're exempt. By the end of the week, I received my first cheerful notice of noncompliance. It accused me of storing commercial equipment in view of the road. My tractor, housing livestock without board permission, my 3 cows, using an unapproved mailbox design, a plain black box on a treated post. Total fine, $150, accruing daily until fixed. I ignored it, so they escalated. I caught Linda's clipboard brigade peeking over my fence for photos. A drone hovered above my barn one afternoon until I blasted its camera with a high-powered flashlight and watched it wobble off like a startled insect. Then came the letter from the HOA's legal counsel claiming I had no valid easement to use the subdivision's main road and gate and must stop entering or face legal action. They were threatening to block my only paved access route on land I didn't just use, land I owned. It's remarkable how quickly ignore them and live in peace becomes, okay, let's be systematic. I took everything to attorney Rachel Hahn, a property lawyer whose office had more plats and casebooks than decor. She scanned the foreclosure deed, the old developer documents, and the HOA's threat letter. Then she leaned back with a low whistle. Oh, they're in trouble, she said, grinning. Short version. The original developer, Meadow Ridge Holdings, had secured option contracts to buy sections of the 1,500 acres as they built out phases. They recorded plat maps of the first few streets, but never finished transferring the underlying fee simple land. Then they went bankrupt. Their lender foreclosed on land they actually owned, not the land they merely had options on. That reverted through tax foreclosure and landed in the lot I purchased. The HOA recorded CC and RS for home lots that existed only on paper, sitting on land the HOA had zero clear title to. Common areas? I asked. Rachel smiled like a wolf with credentials. All on Parcel A. Parcel A is indisputably yours. Roads, gate, clubhouse, playground. And the houses? I asked. Structurally, the residents own the buildings, she said. But their easements across your land and their right to occupy it? Legally shaky. A judge's worst headache. So what's our move? I asked. She tapped her pen. We start by letting them dig their own grave. We sent the HOA a polite certified letter. Dear Meadow Park Estates Board, it has come to our attention that your association's facilities and membership access rely on property and easements belonging to our client, Mr. Nolan Pike. We request a meeting to discuss formalizing easements and usage agreements in good faith. Linda emailed back within hours. We will not be blackmailed by some squatter with a barn. You are subject to our covenants. Remove all unapproved structures and animals or face lien and foreclosure. She CC'd half the neighborhood and their attorney. 2 weeks later, they sued me. Count 1, trespass. Count 2, nuisance. Count 3, unauthorized use of HOA roads and gate. Rachel read the complaint and actually laughed. They're going to regret paying the filing fee, she said. She fired back with a counterclaim that'd wait. Quiet title confirmed my ownership of Parcel A and surrounding acreage. Ejectment of HOA improvements encroaching without proper easements. Declaratory judgment that their CC and RS never applied to me. Damages for harassment, slander title, and interference with access. The court scheduled a preliminary hearing. Linda arrived wearing pearls and fury. At the hearing, Rachel pulled up a huge map, parcel lines, recorded plats, foreclosure deeds. Your Honor, she began, this isn't a squatter dispute. This is an HOA that built its kingdom on documents nobody finished filing. My client bought the land legally, properly, and before any of these people realized they were essentially guests on his property. The judge peered over his glasses at the HOA's attorney. Counsel, do you dispute Mr. Pike's deed to Parcel A? The man fidgeted. The HOA has used and maintained those areas for years, Your Honor. There's an argument. Do you dispute his deed? The judge repeated. No, Your Honor, he admitted. And these trespass claims, the judge continued, are because he placed a barn and drove a tractor on his own land? Yes, but per HOA bylaws. HOA bylaws do not override county property records. The judge said flatly, we're going to trial. In the meantime, the HOA will cease issuing fines or interfering with Mr. Pike's access. Linda lurched to her feet. Your Honor, if we don't enforce standards, this neighborhood will fall apart. The judge gave her a look I knew well, the look of someone who's dealt with too many HOA zealots. Ma'am, he said, your neighborhood may already be falling apart in ways you don't yet understand. That's when I knew the ground had finally shifted. This time under them, word spread like wildfire. Residents learned in bits and pieces that their HOA had sued the barn guy and lost round one. The judge questioned whether the HOA even had rights to their own roads. The man they were trying to find might actually own everything. The board tried to smother the panic with cheerful newsletters. Don't listen to rumors. They wrote in all caps. Your HOA is strong. Property values are excellent. Meanwhile, Rachel was in full attack mode. She subpoenaed the original developer contracts, the HOA's insurance policies, and all board minutes where anyone had mentioned me, my land, or that barn. Those minutes turned out to be pure gold. In one session, Linda had said, on the record, I don't care what the county says about who owns what. If he's using our entrance and roads, he is under my jurisdiction. The stenographer caught every word. We also obtained multiple real estate disclosures in which Linda, acting as an unofficial advisor, had told prospective buyers, all land issues are fully resolved. This is a well-established HOA community. No title concerns. Spoiler, there were title concerns. When the HOA's insurance company saw the counterclaim, seeking millions in potential damages and land value, they flat out denied coverage for anything related to pre-existing title defects. That meant any settlement or judgment would come straight from the HOA Reserve Fund, special assessments on homeowners, and crucially, the personal assets of board members who knowingly misrepresented the facts. The judge ordered mediation first, probably to avoid national headlines from letting someone actually evict an HOA. At mediation, I laid out my position. I owned the 500 acres free and clear. I wasn't trying to evict 200 families. I was simply done being fined on my own land by people who could barely read a plat map. If no agreement was reached, a court would have to choose between recognizing property law or saving HOA feelings. Linda leaned forward, eyes sharp. This is extortion. He wants to hold us hostage, she accused. I leaned back. Lady, you try to lean my land over a red barn, I said calmly. Rachel slid a sheet across the table to the mediator, an appraisal of the 200 or so acres under the subdivision and common areas. The number at the bottom, what that land was worth if sold for industrial or commercial development instead of letting a rogue HOA sit on it, made the HOA treasurer visibly pale. The mediator spoke gently. If this goes to judgment and Mr. Pike prevails, your association could be liable for the value of the encroachment or for loss of use if he restricts access. So he can evict us? A board member squeaked. In theory, the mediator said carefully, he could block or charge for use of his land. He could also sell portions. Banks do not like uncertainty like that under their mortgages. That's when it hit them. This wasn't about mailbox colors anymore. It was about whether banks would even keep their loans if the dirt under their homes became a legal question mark. Trial day felt less like a lawsuit and more like an execution the HOA accidentally scheduled for itself. Rachel called the county recorder to testify. She walked him through the defective deeds, the incomplete transfers, and foreclosure sale I had purchased at. Then she put one of the original developer's former partners on the stand. Did your company ever pay for the underlying fee simple title to Parcel A or the sections platted as common area? She asked directly. No, he admitted. We planned to, but financing fell through. The HOA went ahead anyway. Linda's face hardened. For months she'd insisted this was all a clerical error. Having a witness confess in open court that we never actually bought it was inconvenient. The HOA attorney tried to argue that years of use gave them permanent rights. Rachel dismantled that politely but ruthlessly, pointing out internal emails acknowledging that technically the dirt still belonged to a holding company or bank, the very holding company whose land I had bought auction. Their so-called permanent use, Rachel explained, is basically we've been trespassing for a long time. Finally, the judge delivered his ruling. My title to the 1,500 acres, including all common areas and access roads, was confirmed. The HOA CC and RS were declared not binding on me or my undeveloped acreage. Their attempts to fine, lien, and sue me over my own property were ruled wrongful and abusive, making them liable for damages. Any continued encroachment of HOA amenities on my land required a compensation agreement or modification of use under court supervision. Then came the consequences. Rachel had prepared a settlement framework, reasonable, at least for me. Residents had 3 options. Buy the land under their home footprints at a fair, discounted per acre rate within 18 months, accept a 99-year ground lease with a modest annual fee, guaranteed access in peace, or walk away. The HOA itself would surrender all control of common areas and dissolve because the board had proven reckless and unfit. The judge reviewed it. Harsh but rational, he said. Avoids mass eviction. Otherwise, we'd be litigating parcel by parcel for the next decade. He approved it with one extra twist. Because the board knowingly misrepresented land status and repeatedly harassed me, portions of the damage award will be collectible from board members personally. That's when Linda realized this wasn't just about losing to the barn guy. She was going to pay for it, personally. Within 6 months, the HOA reserve fund was gutted to cover my legal fees and damages. Special assessments hit homeowners like meteors. Enough homeowners demanded change that an emergency vote removed the entire board. Linda had leveraged her own house to fund her attorney and the personal judgment against her. When the dust settled, she could no longer afford the ground beneath her home. Her house went into foreclosure. The personal damages awarded against Linda totaled $275,000. Her face when the judge read that number was a mixture of shock, disbelief, and pure devastation. Hands trembling on the table, she whispered, "But you can't—" The judge, tired-eyed, interrupted. "Ma'am, you chose to pursue this action despite multiple warnings about the validity of your claims. You bear responsibility for the consequences.